Halloween. The time of spooks and scares. The time for monsters of all shapes and sizes to come creeping out of the darkest pits in the universe and haunt both our dreams and our lives. The time for nightmares to become manifest, ideas and concepts taking form both to their natural and unnatural extreme. But despite all the horrifying shapes that surround us, what if I told you that the most dangerous and vile of all monsters was among us? Humans. Mankind. We may not have the physical traits or attributes that other creatures have, but what we lack we make up for in regards to our determination and resolve for progress. To fight continually onwards, even in the face of tyranny. To discover aspects of life and research it. Develop weapons of mass destruction, colossal buildings that reach the heavens, and submersibles able to explore the deepest, darkest pits of the ocean. We are the apex species of our planet for a reason, but all that ingenuity comes at a cost, and when combined with uncontainable ambition, foolish will, and plenty more aspects, you have the capability of reflecting the worst of humanity. And one of the most fascinating examinations I find within fiction of humanity's dark side is the first vicar of the healing church himself, Laurence. So today, for this very special episode of Closer Look, I am going to be taking a look at the symbolism, psychology, and tragedy that makes up Laurence. So, better get your fire-resistant hunter gear ready, because the analysis commences. Starting now! As one of the many students of Byrgenwerth, Laurence plays a central role in the world building of the game, and the events that take place within it. Years before the game starts, a discovery is made below the fictional city of Yharnam. Tombs and passages, carved out by the supernatural Pthumerians, and within them, the article known as the Old Blood. A mysterious substance, capable of curing any disease and ailment, as well as knowledge of the Great Ones, eldritch gods of immense power and wisdom, wishing to ascend humanity to a higher plane, yet always conflicted about the method. The Byrgenwerth scholars are split into two groups: those who believe ascension should be achieved by insight, casting away all use of the old blood, and those who use the blood, believing it to be the most efficient and available method. In particular, we have Master Willem representing the insight camp, and Laurence, who is all for the old blood. The two have a high respect for one another, and they both know of the disastrous effects the blood can bring, yet they still cannot agree on this one contention. And eventually, driven to pursue his goal in life, wanting to use the old blood to help out those in need, Laurence leaves Master Willem and Byrgenwerth behind, proclaiming that no matter what, he would never forget the adage. No longer constrained in his ambitions, Laurence proceeds to head to Yharnam and distribute the old blood to the populace. In doing so, he establishes the Healing Church, a central governing body of Yharnam, and the administrator of all blood within the city. So deeply entrenched into the city they are, that Laurence and the Healing Church become powerful figures, with blood becoming a staple to the city. A sort of attraction that you come for. So much so, to the point that the blood they make is even more intoxicating and addictive than alcohol. Eventually, however, tragedy strikes in the form of the ashen blood disease, and as the sickness continues to spread throughout old Yharnam, the Healing Church and Powder Keg Hunters are left with no other choice than to close off and barricade the place from the rest of Yharnam and burn it all down. And whether it be due to time, overexposure, or by a mistake, Laurence is transformed into the first cleric beast and is slain in battle. It is here in the Hunter's Nightmare that Laurence spends the rest of his days trapped, lit ablaze by constant, never-ending fire, always searching for his skull for some reason, but never able to reach it, or even know why he reaches for it. With all the backstory established, let us move on to the analysis of his character as well as the various ideas represented throughout. A good starting point would be his design, which is similar to that of the old cleric beast you fought early on in the game, but with a few more differences. Namely, the presence of flames and embers throughout his body, most prominently on the left side of the face, as if a chunk of the horn is missing. Besides parts of the body like the right arm and legs missing more hair than usual, features such as the large, asymmetrical left arm and exposed ribs are still present. The template cleric beast design itself is inspired by the modern interpretation of the Wendigo by Larry Fassenden, that of a skinny, thin, but large humanoid creature with deer features, such as huge antlers atop the head, and sometimes the head of a deer itself. In Algonquian legends, the Wendigo is an evil spirit, said to have the capability to possess the minds of victims who cannibalize on the flesh of their kin, and influence others down that path, so that they too can be transformed into horrific monsters. And in some myths, it is said that aside from cannibalization, humans can also be transformed into Wendigos if they are possessed inside a dream. Now, that's not to say all the hunters who became cleric beasts were done so in their dreams or even cannibalized others, but it is a possibility, especially considering the various dream and nightmare realities that are scattered throughout the game, and how some such as Ludwig and even Laurence could have been employed in a hunter's dream by Gurman. The true power of the Wendigo, however, and why it is so important to Bloodborne and Laurence are the ideas such a creature can represent: hunger, encroachment of land, spiritual and physical disharmony, colonialism, and much more. Wendigos are the great consumers, boundless in their hunger, never full until they are feasting, and always stretching for more. And when considering the hunger and danger that Native American tribes had to face in such harsh times, it's no wonder why Wendigo became a prominent, self-fulfilling icon of man's hunger. This all connects back to Laurence through his endless, albeit righteous need to help out mankind through the use of the old blood, and how it slowly transforms him and others into monsters, both physically and metaphorically, that spread and destroy the balance in Yharnam. A balance that some could say was already disrupted when the Healing Church was established. This desire can also be traced back to another aspect of Laurence's design: fire, a great and fundamental element of nature. Fire is often seen as destructive, insatiable, a symbol for anger and rage, ready to consume everything around it into nothing, all attributes befitting to the carnage Laurence has caused in the game. Yet these concepts are also misconceptions, as while fire can be destructive, it is also vital for life. Without the discovery of fire, man would not have been able to survive through the harsh winters, keeping themselves warm, and being able to make tools and weaponry necessary for survival. If it wasn't for Prometheus betraying the gods of Mount Olympus and giving mortals the flame, we would not have civilization or intellect as a whole. Fire is power, knowledge, passion, beauty, and all-embracing, the fuel with which we harness to move forward in our connection to the divine. This gray perspective of fire translates perfectly into Laurence, as his whole character can be seen as a twisted allegory of Prometheus, a man or creature with a burning passion to do good for the world and mankind, seemingly betraying his colleagues at Byrgenwerth to travel to Yharnam, establish the Healing Church, and educate the masses on the blood and Great Ones. This revolution results in a new era for mankind, where people from all over come to Yharnam for a cure-all solution, no matter what they may suffer from. But a fire must always be carefully tended or stoked, else it will spark and rampage out of control. And despite the warning from his dear master, he forgets the adage, and is punished dearly for it. Old Yharnam, the Beast Plague, his subsequent transformation and death, and finally, his imprisonment in the Hunter's Nightmare for all eternity. The incorporation of fire into his design and fight could also mean something depending on the viewer's perspective, whether it be punishment, his greatest mistake coming back to haunt him, or a hint at his ultimate demise, perhaps in the hands of hunters such as the Powder Kegs, Brador, or others. And while we are still on the subject of fire and to loosely connect more Greek mythology, Laurence's ambitions and fall from grace may be a homage to the legend of Icarus, who escaped from prison with his father Daedalus with a pair of wings, only to get caught up in the moment and forget his warning, resulting in him flying too close to the sun, melting the waxen wings, and plummeting down into the freezing waters below. Before moving on to the final thoughts, I want to take some time to explain and analyze other various aspects of Laurence's design and symbolism that didn't exactly fit with the other two main categories. May as well just call this the other things section, I guess. For starters, the method you need to pursue if you wish to fight him. The Skull of Laurence, an item protected secretly by 2 church hunters within an elevator shaft, reads as such: Skull of Laurence, first vicar of the Healing Church. In reality, he became the first cleric beast, and his human skull only exists within the nightmare. The skull is a symbol of Laurence's past, and what he failed to protect. He is destined to seek his skull, but even if he found it, it could never restore his memories. I always found it weird on why it was his skull specifically that was needed to fight him, but doing some research, I think the answer can be found in the meaning of it within Buddhism. Emptiness. Taken from lookforward.co.uk, quote, "This means that phenomena we experience has no inherent nature by itself. Instead, we attach meaning to what we experience. It's basically saying all events are neutral, but we choose to magnify them in our minds," end quote. This right here is the reason why Laurence chooses to chase after his human skull specifically, because even as a beast, he decides to chase after his own humanity and regrets, perhaps denying how he is a beast now, resulting in the skull being human in the nightmare rather than what it actually is. Laurence's humanity is what allows him to cope, I suppose, with his transformation and deny it. But a skull is still a skull. It is dead, has no more life or meaning within it left to give. It is void, only important because Laurence decides to give it meaning in the first place, and he is forever left to chase after it because of his own hubris. It's a really cool piece of detail inspired by an Eastern-based philosophy and religion, when most of it thus far has been Greek and Lovecraftian. Moving further into his room, but just before the fight begins, we can see Laurence slumped over in a giant throne, with some sort of statue overlooking the beast in his sleep. Upon close inspection, the statue visually appears to be clothed in some kind of robe, with wings along the backside of the body holding what seems to be a jar that is tipped over, almost as if its contents are pouring into the Beast King's mouth, which is all on top of the figure being headless. Now, this could just be thrown around and excused as just cool gothic architecture that just so happens to be a bit weird because A, it's Bloodborne, and B, because you're in a nightmare. But I think that there could be some more meaning interpreted from this. I would like to wager personally that this statue represents the deal that Laurence struck with the Great Ones, and more specifically, the Old Blood. The lack of a head represents the ambiguity of the Great Ones, creatures who have ascended to planes beyond us mortals and appears invisible or unidentifiable in their influence. The robe and wings, as well as the posture, convey a motherly or caring feel, as if it is an angel from the heavens blessing us with the mysterious contents of the vase. Yet the lack of a head makes it feel off, as well as malevolent without the wings could look demonic. Finally, the content of the vase, without his pointed out, can be assumed to be some sort of liquid, and knowing that this is Bloodborne after all, and that the character we see is Laurence himself, it can be inferred that the liquid is the Old Blood. A gift seemingly from the heavens, or the Great Ones if you prefer, given to Laurence, who bathes in its power and spreads it to the populace, becoming drunk and intoxicated and eventually turning into a beast. Now, of course, what I am bringing up right now is all interpretive evidence, so it is your call at the end of the day on whether you believe what I say or have a different view on what it can mean. Next up, something smaller or actually quite important to the fight with him, his legs. As more damage is dealt to Laurence, he begins to modify Cleric Beast's attacks unintentionally by adding more chain combos, swings, and various trips to catch hunters off guard. And once the last third of his health is reached, Laurence loses his legs entirely and is left to crawl around the ground in a completely new phase that somehow makes him even more dangerous than before. Despite already being transformed into a beast, this process could be a metaphor to how he is slowly losing his humanity, being stripped of features that would define him as human, and instead being left as something that is unrecognizable, something that can only crawl around and scream in agony as it tries to claw out of its inescapable pit, eventually quietly ending as you release Laurence from his personal hell. Finally, the song that plays during the battle, like with cleric beasts or German, is composed vocally out of just Latin, and depending on the translation you choose, can offer more insight into what might be the personal story of Laurence. Lines such as "there will be a reward that the holy blood keeps secret" and "the feast is guaranteed by the holy blood" further supports the statue bargain idea that I talked about earlier, wherein which Laurence accepts the offer in front of him, hoping to learn of a secret and potentially more from the old blood, and to be rewarded for all his efforts by a feast. Others, such as "wait, is this blasphemy?" and "I try to repay humanity with holy blood," illustrates his thought process, cycling between his goal of furthering humanity to the next stage while also being conflicted on the danger present and how he is basically betraying his old scholars and friends back at Byrgenwerth. And then finally, "fear the poison" and "so come, drink the wine, let your tongue ascend, O juice of the reckless," demonstrates the fault of his own humanity and how his untamed desire for progress blurred the consequences and dangers present, causing him to recklessly charge into a situation where everything changes for the worst. Again, this all depends on the translation you choose to believe, or how truly accurate the translation is, resulting in potentially different meanings and outcomes for certain people, so take it with a grain of salt, I suppose. And with all of that done, and with all the information now displayed out in front of us, it is time we wrap up this analysis. Even before I fought Laurence for the first time recently, I have always been drawn in and fascinated by his story and the potential meaning of it. I mean, it isn't like this is the guy responsible for basically everything that goes wrong in the game or something. No, totally not. Even disregarding the feeling of finally fighting Laurence after hearing so much about him, the fight and music has always conveyed to me something more. Something tragic, to be honest. The feeling I have when I see this beast finally go down as the music and violent crescendos isn't one of glass-shattering yelling out of victory, or even disappointment, but rather sadness. And I think the reason why is because of how the story not only builds up to this battle, but also hints at and symbolizes Laurence's rise to power, ambition, and subsequent fall, all within the span of a single fight and a music track. Hearing the violin or choir go ham near the end as Laurence charges at me on only his two arms doesn't make me panic, but rather feel sorry for the poor bastard, and how someone with such good and well-meaning intentions could have fallen to such a low point. The utilization of design elements and inspirations also go hand in hand with the story, adding to the overall weight that makes Laurence such an integral figure. Did he deserve what was coming? Maybe. Is he entirely pure in what he did? Oh, hell no. He still caused a lot of messed up shit to happen, no questions about that. But can he be called a villain at the end of the day? No. And that's the beauty of this battle and game to me. There is no 100% pure villain. No great mastermind to blame and cement all of our hatred into. All that we have left to blame is ourselves. Because as much as we may shit on Laurence and how he forgets the adage and screws everything up, let us not forget or even try to deny that there are people just like that in real life. Hundreds, thousands, millions, and potentially more. Laurence took a huge step forward in an age where nobody was 100% agreeing. A time where there was no one solution, choosing the method he believed in, regardless of the risks that came with it. For that is just simple human ingenuity. Just as Albert Einstein reinvented the realm of physics and science with his principles, resulting in the creation of the atomic bombs in an age of cold terror, so too did Laurence. Laurence is human. Laurence is understandable. Laurence is faulty. Laurence is a champion of unrestrained ambition. And Laurence is the dark flame of humanity. Happy Halloween, everybody.